here today with Deborah Byrne from the Brain Injury Association of Tasmania. How are you going, Deborah?
Not too bad, Eva. Thank you for having me today.
No, it's wonderful to have you here as well. So you're the Executive Officer of Brain Injury Association of Tasmania, and you accompanied Paul here today. Can you tell me a little bit about what your history has been with Brain Injury Association of Tasmania?
Yes, so I joined the Brain Injury Association of Tasmania in 2002, so I've been with the organisation for a long time. Might be easier if, rather than having to repeat Brain Injury Association of Tasmania all the time, it might be easier to go to BIAT. So back in, just a bit of history I guess about the organisation, back in 1999 the state government did a review of brain injury services in Tasmania and determined that BIAT would be the peak body and that our role would be providing information and referral for anyone that needed it, that had been living with or impacted by brain injury. We were to undertake systemic advocacy, particularly community awareness, which is really important about brain injury, and also some professional development. So the organisation was funded by the Tasmanian government, providing those services through to 2020. With the introduction of the National Disability Insurance Scheme, all the state governments handed over funding to the Commonwealth for the NDIS, and BIAT lost its funding, and we then had to apply for and were reliant on project funding. So since that time we've been doing several different projects.
So how many years is it since you've been involved with BIAT?
So 22 years.
22 years.
Yes.
So what brought you to the world of brain injury? I'm really wonder.
Yeah.
Brain injury.
It's really interesting because prior to taking up the position, I knew absolutely nothing at all about brain injury. So I had been working for an organisation called the Tasmanian Council on Intellectual Disability. We'd been doing a bit of work for the Association for Children with Disability, and that came to an end. So I guess my role became redundant and I was looking for some other work, and the position with Brain Injury Association came up and I applied for that. As I said, I knew nothing about brain injury, and one of the things I find really interesting, even after being with the organisation for 22 years, I'm still learning about brain injury. I know in an earlier episode, you were talking to Paul about, that recovery that still happens. And I think, we talk about with brain injury, if you've met one person with brain injury, you've met one person with brain injury. There are no two brain injuries the same. And I think it's been really interesting. You see the impact that a brain injury has on a person's life. And so it is something that, as I said, being in the position for this long, I'm still learning about so many different things around brain injury.
Yeah, well, one could say brain injury is a moving feast for sure, couldn't you?
Most definitely, yes.
I'd like to speak about an absolutely brilliant initiative by your organisation and probably by you yourself that is changing lives for so many people around Australia. I know that I needed this when I had my injury, and this is the National Assistance Card. Can you introduce the concept to people and let us know more about it?
Certainly, Eva. So as I said, when we lost our state government funding in March 2020, we had to start applying for different grants for different projects. And so we've got a project we're really proud of, Justice Project, supporting people who have cognitive impairment who are either at risk of entering or exiting the justice system, because we know, people with brain injury are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. We have an amazing employment project. One of the things we find for people following brain injury, trying to re-enter or enter the workforce, is when is the right time to disclose their brain injury. And sometimes that disclosure can be really difficult. So we have a project where we step people through them understanding what they want from for work, producing a video that can then go to their employer or prospective employer. And then probably about 20 years ago, we had a person in Tasmania with a brain injury that had a really negative interaction with the Tasmania Police. And so we formed a partnership with Tasmania Police and we developed a card. It was called an ABI ID card, or an identification card. And so people would apply for the card. There was a paper-based system, and we would print them a card using the old publisher system, laminate it and give them the card, and we'd let the police know they had that. And it was making quite a big difference in people's lives, because quite often someone with a brain injury, they may have no obvious impairments. It's the difficulties that they have of being able to communicate, or the cognitive impacts. And there's very poor understanding in the community about brain injury. So we started getting a lot of interest from people with brain injury in other states about the ABI ID card. So we applied for a grant, and initially the grant was to be able to roll out a brain injury card for people nationally. We did a bit of research and looked at, I guess, what people wanted out of the card. And we found that people didn't really want the focus to be on their disability, for the focus to be on the assistance that they required. So we changed the name of the card to a national assistance card. Mm-hmm. And we knew that there were a lot of other cards out there, but they're very much a paper-based card. They don't really allow the card to be personalised, so specific. So just as an example, you and I could both have a brain injury. We could both have printed on our card that we have memory problems. But for you could go into Centrelink, and the memory problem for you might be that you need Centrelink staff to write things down for you because you're unable to remember things. For me, it could be that with lots of noise and distractions around me, I can remember things, but with all the distractions, that's going to stop me being able to remember things. So the National Assistance Card, and I've got a sample that prepared earlier here.
Wonderful.
So just an example of the card. A person, I could come in to say, if it's Centrelink, I could show you the card, and it just says your understanding and assistance is appreciated. So I could just explain to you, I have a brain injury, I need to meet you please in a quiet room. I don't have to show the back of my card, disclose I have a disability. Some people need that little bit of extra support. So the back of the card says that I live with a brain injury. They can list 5 areas where they have the most difficulty, but the unique aspect of this is that it includes a QR code. So as part of the project that we did, we purpose-built an online platform that allows people to go in, apply for the card, list their areas of difficulty, but they can also include either in writing or with a video.
That's great. The
assistance that they may require. So you can scan the code here, just using your phone, the camera on your phone. So I just scan that, and what that does, that brings up, Paul very generously has shared his information with us. So for example, with Paul, it says, I'm just as intelligent as you, I have memory and recall difficulties, I'm not drunk, I have a brain injury. He says, I have word finding difficulties, especially when I'm tired. And really important things like when I fall, it really hurts when people try to move me. So unless I'm in imminent danger or already unconscious, I should be able to get myself upright. He says he would also like people to know is when he has a seizure, he can't remember things. And the card also includes a person's nominated contact person, and Paul has that, please only call my nominated contact person if I ask you to, or if I have a medical emergency. And Paul also has a video that can be played, so if you don't have someone that wants to take the time to read all that information, they can just play the video and listen to what it is that Paul wants people to know.
There is also access.
Yes,
that's an access ability, an access availability for people perhaps who can't read, and then they can watch the video and hear it.
One of the other exciting things that we've done is continuing that partnership with police. And so we have it in Tasmania at the moment, and we're working on getting it with all the other states and territories where people can elect to have their information provided to police, because we know sometimes people forget that they either have the card on them, they forget to take their card. So if a person gets into difficulty in the community, and it might be that police are called, police can actually look up the person's details, and when they come out, they're able to respond in an informed way. The former Commissioner of Police in Tasmania. He appeared before the Royal Commission, the Disability Royal Commission, and he actually cited the National Assistance Card and his example of best practice in supporting police to appropriately respond to people with brain injury. So that's fairly exciting.
No,
yeah.
this is brilliant. It really is, because I just remember the complete cluelessness of security guards and bouncers at nightclubs when it came to dealing with people with brain injuries. And I remember I wanted to get something started in SA where as part of people's training to be a security guard or a bouncer, they had to be taken through an awareness session of people with brain injuries and how that can manifest. I don't think it ever happened though.
Yeah.
But this is serving the purpose, isn't it?
Yes, well, one of the important things, obviously, creating awareness for people with brain injury that the card is available is important, but we could have 10,000 cards out in the community, but if we didn't do some work around making the community aware of the card, then there's no point, they don't know how to respond. So if you think about it, every time a person with brain injury shows their card in the community, that person is learning about brain injury. I go into the bank, I show them my card, that person has learnt a little bit more about brain injury and how to respond, so that maybe when the next person comes in, it might be, oh, perhaps that person has brain injury.
Well, it's a gentle way of educating, isn't it? It's a gentle education, and it doesn't put the person at a loss. I understand the recent cuts to the NDIS are affecting the National Assistance Card. Can you tell me more about this?
Not so much the cuts to the NDIS, but what happened, so when the NDIS was introduced, it's really fantastic. As I said, all of the state governments, they handed over their funding to the Commonwealth. But people think about the NDIS and they think it includes everybody with a disability. But what they don't realise is that up to 90% of people with disability in Australia will not be eligible for the NDIS, but still need some form of support. So, as I said, some of the services that the Brain Injury Association used to provide was that information and referral service. So, we're no longer funded to be able to do that. So there's a huge gap there. So I guess the NDIS introduced a strategy called Information Linkages and Capacity Building, which was a series of competitive grant rounds that organisations had to apply for. So we applied for a grant to be able to pilot the National Assistance Card, and as I said, we were successful in that. We piloted it. We have over 600 cards out there at the moment in the community. That also includes, we trialled it in Tasmania for the autistic community, and it's been really successful. We then applied for another grant, so the grant ceased on the 30th of June, and then we said, well, we've proven the concept, this is really amazing. We've had some amazing feedback, and actually if I can just read a couple of the comments. We've surveyed people as part of the, the grant evaluation. Yes. And people have said, it's been helpful to give people an explanation of what's going on with me as my disability is invisible. It's been helpful to actually provide a card to speak for me when I don't feel I can. Another person said, it makes me feel safe knowing if I have a meltdown out in public and emergency services are called, all will be okay, as my information regarding my traumatic brain injury is available and I won't be treated unfairly. Or another one I thought was really important. It also helps me feel confident because having the card makes others realise that you have a verifiable disability. Just because you can walk and talk doesn't mean you are not disabled. So this is the kind of feedback we were getting. As I said, we invested tens of thousands of dollars into a purpose-built online platform. We proved the concept, but we weren't successful in getting that grant to be able to continue the National Assistance Card. So as I mentioned, one of by its roles is that systemic advocacy. So I did a lot of lobbying to Minister Shorten's office, the NDIS Minister. I pestered them, annoyed them, told them the advantages of the card, the impact of its loss, what it would mean. and we're just in the process now of a negotiation around some additional funding to be able to keep the card going for a further 12 months. I don't know what will happen after that. We're hoping we can roll it out nationally for the autistic community. It also means people that if their primary disability is brain injury, but they also have a co-occurring mental illness or epilepsy or intellectual disability, they can include that on the card as well and communicate what, I guess, the impacts of their disability and the support that they need using a personalised card.
Well, here's to your success and here's to all of our success. Thank you so much, Deborah.
Thank you, Eva. It's been a pleasure talking with you today.
Yeah, thank you very much.